The Stoic secret to conquering anxiety and embracing genuine happiness. It was 2:47 a.m., and I was on the floor of my apartment, face down, soaked in cold sweat, and completely paralyzed by fear. I wasn't dying, but it felt like it. My heart was pounding so violently, I could hear it echoing in my ears like a war drum. My thoughts were spiraling. What if I can't make rent? What if everyone finds out I'm a fraud? What if I fail again? That night, I had my first panic attack. You ever have a moment like that? A moment where the fear isn't just in your head, it's in your chest, your breath, your bones? That's not just worry, that's full-blown anxiety. And here's the crazy part. That moment, that breakdown on the cold floor, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Because it forced me to ask a question I had never dared ask before. What if everything I believe about control, success, and happiness is wrong? And that question, yes, that terrifying question, led me to a 2,000-year-old answer. One passed down by men who had faced real fear, torture, exile, death. Men like Epictetus, Seneca, and Marcus Aurelius. And what they taught me changed everything. Today, I'm going to show you how their ancient Stoic wisdom isn't just philosophy. It's the ultimate weapon against anxiety and the secret doorway to real, lasting happiness. And I promise you, this isn't the stuff you've seen on motivational YouTube channels. We're going deeper than quotes. We're going inside the mind. So buckle up, because if you've ever felt paralyzed by fear, trapped by your thoughts, or just tired of pretending to be okay when you're not, you're about to discover the Stoic secret that can truly set you free. Let's begin. Blank. Blank. You know how we're taught to control everything? Control your schedule, your finances, your body, your success. But what if that obsession with control is exactly what's making you anxious? Here's what Epictetus said. Some things are up to us, and some things are not. That sounds simple, but it's not. Because the moment you truly accept it, that 99% of life is outside your control, you start to feel a strange, terrifying kind of freedom. Like skydiving. You let go of the idea that you can manipulate the weather, or other people, or even your own emotions, and you start focusing on what you can control. Your judgment, your actions, your character. Nothing more. Think about this for a second. How many hours did you lose this week worrying about something that, deep down, you knew you couldn't control? Maybe someone ghosted you. Maybe the job offer didn't come through. Maybe your parents just won't change. So what do? We overthink, obsess, drown ourselves in what-ifs. But the Stoics would say, stop. Stop confusing the winds for the sails. Let me show you how this looks in real life. When I first started building my dream, this channel, this mission, I was terrified of failing. I'd check analytics every hour. I'd panic when a video underperformed. Until one day, I wrote a single sentence on a sticky note and stuck it on my wall. The outcome is not up to me. The effort is. And that changed everything. I stopped judging myself by the outcome. I stopped tying my self-worth to views, likes, comments, even revenue. I started focusing on my intention, my discipline, my honesty. And weirdly, that's when things started growing. Because anxiety thrives on illusion. And the illusion is, you must control everything to be happy. But real happiness doesn't come from control. It comes from alignment, with nature, with reason, with truth. And that's what the Stoics called living according to nature. Sounds abstract, right? Let me break it down. You ever seen a river try to stop a rock? No, it flows around it. The river doesn't resist, it adapts. That's what you and I are meant to do. Not resist every uncomfortable truth. Not rage against every hardship. But to flow, to adapt, to remain stable in the storm. And speaking of storms, let me tell you the story of James Stockdale. He was a U.S. Navy pilot shot down over Vietnam, captured, tortured, locked in solitary confinement for over 7 years. 7 years. But he survived, mentally intact. And you know what he credited? Stoicism. He had studied Epictetus before the war, and when everything was stripped from him, his freedom, his rank, his future, he said one thing gave him peace. I am not my circumstances. He couldn't control what they did to him, but he could control how he interpreted it. And that's the ultimate Stoic move. Because your anxiety doesn't come from events. It comes from your judgment of events. You didn't get rejected, you interpreted it as rejection. You didn't fail, you interpreted it as failure. You didn't lose, you interpreted it as loss. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "Choose not to be harmed, and you won't be." That's not denial, that's radical empowerment. You can't control the world, but you can choose what meaning you assign to it. So here's my challenge to you. What if your anxiety is just your mind refusing to let go of what was never yours to hold? Let that question sit. Let it burn a little. Because in the next segment, I'm going to take you somewhere darker, somewhere deeper. I'll show you how the Stoics faced grief, loss, and betrayal, and still walked away with peace in their hearts. And I'll share the night I almost gave up, and how one unexpected Stoic practice pulled me back from the edge. The night I faced the void, and what Stoicism taught me about true peace. It was the quiet that scared me the most. No sirens, no alarms, just silence. I was sitting in my car on the edge of a cliff road. Engine off, keys in my lap. I wasn't planning anything reckless. But I wasn't planning anything at all. I felt done, empty, like my soul had quietly slipped out the back door, leaving behind a body running on fumes. Everything looked fine on the outside. Work was good, my relationships were stable, my health was okay, but inside, I felt like I was watching life through a window I couldn't open. Have you ever been there? That place where nothing is exactly wrong, but nothing feels right either? And it was in that moment, on the edge of that cliff, emotionally, not physically, that I remembered something Marcus Aurelius wrote. You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. He called it memento mori, remember that you will die. Sounds morbid, right? But it's not. Because memento mori isn't about fearing death. It's about waking up to life. When I read that again, sitting there, I felt something shift. I realized I wasn't afraid of dying. I was afraid of not living, of wasting the little time I had worrying about things that didn't matter. And so I asked myself a question that Stoicism forces us to face head on. If today were your last day, would your thoughts be worthy of it? That one hit hard. Because my thoughts were full of worry, fear, regret, anxiety. And the Stoics would say, that's a betrayal of life. You and I, we weren't made to drown in overthinking. We were made to act, to choose, to love, to build, to be present. That's the real tragedy of anxiety. It robs you of the only thing you ever truly have, now. Epictetus said, it's not death or pain that is to be feared, but the fear of pain and death. In other words, fear isn't just unnecessary. It's optional. Let me prove it. When I stood up from that car and walked away from the cliff, I wasn't magically cured, but I started doing one thing the Stoics insisted on. I began to prepare for every fear. Not avoid it, not deny it, but premeditate it. They called it premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. Here's how it works. You take your greatest fear, let's say losing your job, and you ask yourself, what would I do if that happened? Then you go deeper. How would I respond? What could I control? How would I rebuild? And something miraculous happens. The monster shrinks. Why? Because the mind can't handle undefined darkness. But once you shine light on it, once you walk through the fear logically, practically, bravely, you take your power back. I did this with every fear I had. Losing friends, losing opportunities, losing money, even dying. And guess what? I realized I had far more strength than I gave myself credit for. That's what the Stoics believed. That you already have everything you need inside you. That strength isn't given. It's revealed, through hardship, through fear, through crisis. Seneca said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." So ask yourself, how much of your anxiety is about real danger, and how much is just recycled imagination? The Stoics practiced something called voluntary discomfort. They'd walk barefoot, sleep on the floor, wear cheap clothes, go without food. Not because they were masochists, but because they were training themselves to realize, I can survive without the things I fear losing. Imagine if you lived that way. If you practiced losing, so that when real loss came, it didn't break you. If you practiced humility, so when ego tried to inflate you, you could stay grounded. If you practiced discomfort, so when life got hard, you were already ready. This is the opposite of how most of us live. We run from fear. The Stoics ran into it. Not because they liked pain, but because they knew, on the other side of fear is freedom. Let me tell you a story about a man who knew this better than most. His name was Cato. He was a Roman senator, a Stoic to the core. When Julius Caesar began his rise to dictatorship, Cato refused to bow. He wore the same worn-out clothes, walked barefoot into the Senate, refused bribes, refused comfort, refused to submit. And when Caesar finally took control, Cato chose to die on his own terms, stoically, with dignity, rather than live under tyranny. Now, I'm not saying you should fight emperors. But I am saying this. There's a Caesar in your life. A force trying to dominate your mind, your attention, your emotions. Maybe it's anxiety, maybe it's addiction, maybe it's that voice telling you you're not good enough. And the question is, will you bow to it, or will you be like Cato? Will you train yourself to live freely, regardless of circumstances? That's the heart of Stoicism. It's not about suppressing emotion. It's about mastering perspective. And there's one more story I want to share with you, one that changed how I see everything. It's about a little boy named Lucius. Lucius was born with a rare illness. Doctors said he wouldn't live past 10. But every day, Lucius woke up with a smile. He would say to his mom, "Today is a good day to be alive." He loved bugs, dirt, stars, laughter. One day, a volunteer asked him, "Aren't you scared you might die soon?" Lucius looked up and said, "We all die, but not all of us live first." That hit me like lightning. Because Lucius had understood something it took me 30 years to learn. That the secret to conquering anxiety isn't adding more comfort. It's adding more clarity. And clarity comes when you accept the worst, and choose the best anyway. So here's what I want you to do. Tonight, before you sleep, light a candle. Sit quietly. And ask yourself, if tomorrow never came, would I be proud of how I live today? Not proud of your achievements, but of your mindset, your courage, your peace. That's Stoicism in action. That's how you disarm anxiety. Not by hiding from the dark, but by learning to shine in it. In the next segment, I'm going to show you exactly how the Stoics redefined happiness, not as something you chase, but something you become. And I'll reveal the daily rituals, mental shifts, and powerful truths that can make you unshakably joyful, even in a broken world. You've come this far. Don't stop now. The Stoic blueprint for unshakable joy, even when life breaks you. Let me ask you something deeply personal. When was the last time you felt truly happy? Not distracted, not entertained, not momentarily excited. I'm talking about the kind of happiness that's so still, so deep, it hums quietly inside your chest, like the earth itself is whispering, "You're okay now." For most of us, that kind of happiness feels rare, elusive, fleeting. And if you're like me, you've probably spent years chasing it, in jobs, in people, in achievements, in likes and follows and the next shiny milestone. But what if I told you that the Stoics had a completely different definition of happiness? That they didn't see it as something out there to acquire, but something in here to awaken. And once you truly understand their view of happiness, you stop chasing. You start living. Let me show you what I mean. The Stoics used a Greek word for happiness, eudaimonia. It doesn't mean pleasure. It doesn't mean feeling good. It means human flourishing, a state of being where your character is in alignment with your nature, where your soul is in harmony with your actions. It's not about avoiding pain. It's about cultivating virtue, courage, wisdom, justice, and self-control. Marcus Aurelius said, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." Let that sink in. Not on your salary. Not on your looks. Not on your follower count. But on your thinking, your internal narrative. You see, the Stoics knew something most of us forget. External things can never give you internal peace. Because if your happiness depends on anything external, status, wealth, comfort, then your happiness is always at risk. But if your happiness comes from who you are and how you live, then no one can ever take it from you. Let me give you a real-world example. There was a man named Musonius Rufus, one of the lesser-known Stoics, but a legend in his own right. He was arrested and exiled not once, but multiple times, and during one exile, his followers came to him and said, "Master, how are you not devastated?" He smiled and said, "Wherever I am, I have the tools to be free." Because freedom, to the Stoics, wasn't about geography. It was about the soul. It was about waking up each day and choosing to live with excellence, regardless of the conditions. Think about that. You could lose your job and still be happy. You could lose your home and still be content. You could lose everything and still smile with peace in your heart. Not because you're in denial, but because your peace was never built on things that rust, fade, or die. It was built on something eternal. Your character. Seneca put it this way: "A good character, once established, cannot be harmed." That's the blueprint. If you want to build unshakable joy, start with your character. So how do we do that? How do we cultivate the kind of internal power that anxiety can't penetrate? The Stoics had daily rituals. Simple, practical, powerful. And if you're serious about change, I want you to adopt them. Starting tomorrow morning. Ritual number 1. The morning reflection. Before the world bombards you with chaos, take 10 minutes, just 10. Ask yourself, what kind of person do I want to be today? What challenges might I face? And how will I meet them with virtue? What is truly in my control? This isn't just journaling, it's mental armor. It's how you walk into the day already prepared for battle, emotionally, spiritually, ethically. Ritual number 2. The voluntary pause. At any moment during your day, stop, take a deep breath. Ask, what story am I telling myself right now? Because 90% of anxiety is just bad storytelling. You assume the worst, you catastrophize, you spiral. But when you pause, you interrupt that story, and you replace it with truth. Not optimism, not wishful thinking, just clarity. Is this within my control? If yes, act. If no, let go. That one question alone can save your sanity. Ritual number 3, the evening audit. Before you sleep, look back, without judgment, without guilt. Ask, did I live today aligned with my values? Where did I slip? Why? What can I learn, and how will I grow tomorrow? Marcus Aurelius did this, every night. Not to beat himself up, but to become more aware. Because awareness is the first step to transformation. And here's something powerful. Even if you feel like your life is chaos, like you're failing, flailing, falling apart, these 3 rituals can anchor you. They give you structure. They give you clarity. They give you back yourself. Now, I want to share with you one of the most powerful Stoic practices I've ever used. It's not flashy, it's not sexy, but it works. It's called the inner citadel. Epictetus said, "No man is free unless he is master of himself." The inner citadel is your mental fortress. It's where you go when life attacks you, when people betray you, when the world doesn't play fair. It's not a physical place. It's a mental posture. You close your eyes, you breathe, and you retreat into the deepest part of your soul, the part no one can touch. The part that says, you can hurt my body, but you cannot corrupt my mind. You can take my money, but not my honesty. You can reject me, but you cannot make me hate. That's power. That's peace. That's happiness. And the best part? Anyone can build it. You don't need a guru. You don't need $1 million. You just need courage, discipline, and practice. So here's the question I leave you with. Are you living in reaction, or in reason? Because one leads to anxiety. The other leads to peace. One ties your worth to circumstance. The other grounds it in virtue. One leaves you chasing happiness. The other helps you become happiness. You don't need to become a monk. You don't need to move to the mountains. You just need to do what the Stoics did. Wake up. Face the day. Live with courage. Accept what comes. Let go of what you can't control. And love what is. They had a phrase for this, too. Amor fati. Love of fate. It doesn't mean you enjoy suffering. It means you trust that every moment, yes, even the painful ones, are part of your growth. You say to life, whatever happens, I will use it to become better. That's not weakness. That's the strongest thing a human being can say. So if you take anything from this video, let it be this. You don't need to conquer the world to conquer anxiety. You just need to conquer yourself. One choice at a time. One breath at a time. One day at a time. Because the Stoic secret isn't hidden. It's here, now. And it's whispering to you. Be still, you already have everything you need. So go out there. Live wisely. Love deeply. Act justly. And fear nothing. Because you, my friend, are not broken. You're becoming. And that is the most Stoic thing of all.